Hello, and welcome to AdAge's custom webcast, sponsored by DELVE. The topic of today's webcast is the leader's way to effective marketing transformation. I'm Christopher Hosford with the AdAge team, and I'll be your moderator today. Now, we have just a few quick items to go over before we begin. We'll hear from today's speakers, and then we'll open the floor to your questions. So to participate in the Q&A portion of the webcast, all you have to do is type your question into the Ask a Question text area, and then click the Send button. You can submit your questions at any time during the webcast to our entire panel or to individual panelists, and we'll address as many of them as we can after our presenters' prepared remarks. Now let's get started. I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. Michael Chapman is the Chief Client Officer at the Martin Agency and is the former CMO of CarLotz. We also have Jennifer LaFrance, who's the former Senior Director of Global Digital Strategy at McCormick Company. Rick Medeiros is Executive Vice President of Digital Business Development at the LYCRA Company. And finally, we have Greg Sobiech, the founder and CEO of DELVE, who will be leading today's conversation. Greg, I believe you're up first, so take it away. It's all yours.
So, Christopher, thank you so much for having us, and thank you to AdAge for organizing today's event. And before we delve deeper, I would love to just hear from our panelists about their experience or their perspective on the topic. And Michael, you're right now with the Martin Agency. You were just with CarLotz. What stands out the most to you when it comes to the topic of marketing transformation that organizations are going through today?
Yeah, well, I'd just say that on Friday, I was the CMO of a tech-based, used car consignment marketplace, and today I'm the Chief Client Officer at the Martin Agency. So the interaction and intersection of creativity and data has always been, a super important and exciting topic for me. It's something I've searched out in all the different roles that I've had. And so I'm excited to go through all this information with everybody and have this conversation, because there's nothing, more important than that union, I think, especially as we head into the sort of uncertain economic times.
Thanks, Michael. And Jennifer, thank you for being here with us today. I really like what you did at McCormick. Can you kind of share some of the roles you've had there and what you were able to accomplish?
Sure. So it's great to be here, Greg. Thank you. I have just finished up an 18-year career with McCormick, doing a lot of digital transformation and a lot of digital marketing work. I think what's most exciting to me about the topic today, particularly after spending several years in the consumer packaged good space, is that we're now becoming better storytellers by harnessing the power of data to be more personalized and to be more relevant and respond directly or engage directly with consumers in the space.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Rick, I think that you are truly leading a significant marketing transformation at LYCRA. And we met when you were with Tupperware. So you have a history of, I would say, you're a serial digital transformation expert. That's how I view you. And I'm really excited that you're here today. What resonates the most to you about today's topic? And well, we can't hear you, Rick.
Never fails.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. We can hear you now. Oh, we heard you for a second, and then we lost you again. So maybe as Rick is looking for his audio, I will share a couple words about myself. So Greg Sobiech, I'm the founder and CEO of DELVE. We are trusted marketing advisors to marketing leaders, often work on data, technology, and activation projects. And one of our superpowers is the fact that we have a team that loves to change the status quo. And we love partnering with marketing leaders who also want to make a significant change in their environment And I'm going to wait later on for Rick to come back to us. I'm sure he is okay. So we'll give him a chance to say hello. But before we continue, we're going to talk today about how the role of a CMO is changing. Marketers are under pressure. If you feel that your media costs are increasing and you need to maintain the same ROI regardless, if you are concerned about third-party data going away and you feel pressured to focus on first-party data, if you're thinking about customer obsession and if you feel that COVID has accelerated the shift towards digital, hopefully you will walk away with a number of actionable insights today that we'll share with you and with our panelists. So we're going to talk today about the kinds of pressures that marketing leaders are experiencing. We'll talk about how marketing leaders are redefining their job descriptions as a response to those pressures. We'll share examples of initiatives that companies are undertaking to deal with those pressures. And we'll zoom in on first-party data and on value of data in transforming marketing organizations. A quick background, we'll use a survey that DELVE has recently conducted with Phronesis Partners as the backdrop for this conversation. We have interviewed 308 marketing leaders that were mostly located in the States, and we interviewed mid-market companies, $500 million to $2 billion. Now, Jennifer, if I can turn to you for a second, I know that McCormick is a recent Fortune 500 company, $6 billion in revenue. And you mentioned to me that these survey results, even though they were done with smaller brands, that seemed to have resonated with you in terms of the learnings.
Absolutely, Greg. I think, just based on the results and the survey that you shared, there's a lot of consistency here, just all across the board, big brands, small brands, regardless of industry. I think many of us as marketing or digital leaders in our organizations are facing these same challenges and facing some of these same opportunities together.
Thank you. So it's really heartwarming, for me to learn that these insights are probably relevant to a variety of brands. I think all the brands that we all deal with are growing through similar changes. So this will be hopefully helpful to anyone who's on the call today. Let's get straight into it. So one of the questions that we asked in the survey was about the evolving role of a marketing leader. And if you can look at the screen, we found, for example, that 31% of marketing leaders believe that they need to have bigger responsibilities around data technology and the use of data and technology in marketing. Another 23% believe that they need to sort of change their role and think of themselves as a chief strategy officer, which to them means focus on customer experience. So for example, personalization or developing new digital experiences. Michael, what is your point of view? Have you seen your role as a marketing leader evolve over the past years? And do you expect that to change? Any kind of relevant experiences that you can share from CarLotz or from Martin Agency? And I think you're muted, Michael.
First and foremost, I think the idea of changing your title, I just don't think it matters what your title says as much as what responsibilities you have or what sort of aspirations you have. And, I've actually worn, the chief strategy officer hat and the chief growth officer hat and the CMO title. I think it's important that all of those things become more and more a part of what the marketing function at an organization stands for. But if I had to pick one, I guess I'd go with the majority. I think the CMO CDO role is so important because technology is somewhat commoditized. Capital and financing, more and more people have access, or more and more businesses have access to the same places. So it's really the experience that and sort of the position and the vision of where the company is that actually becomes the competitive advantage in a more modern, economy. Mm-hmm. So being able to marry sort of the marketing and experience together, I think is truly the most powerful. And for CarLotz, it was certainly 100% that way, right? You needed to be able to bring consumer insight. You needed to understand what the messages were. But if you weren't hand in glove with technology or product and bringing those experiences to life, you weren't going to make as a big a splash as you could have.
And thanks, Michael. And what really resonated with me is that, like you said, it's not about necessarily changing the title itself of the role that we're in. It's more about the roles and responsibilities changing. That really resonated with me. And Jennifer, I know that when you were at McCormick, you were leading actually digital transformation. And I actually think that you were, in fact, wearing different hats in that marketing leadership role.
That's right. And I wholeheartedly agree with Michael. It's less about the title and more about, what are those responsibilities? And the fact of the matter is they are constantly changing and evolving. So I never actually held any of the three titles in those first three line items, but certainly my role was a combination of those three things. And just also, this also has to be in partnership with that chief technology officer. And I think you can figure out how to disperse responsibilities across some of these C-suite executives as you're continuing to advance. I think the most important thing is to determine what success looks like and have that agreement across all these leaders.
Super. And Rick, welcome back. I'm really happy that you're with us. Just take a step back. Do you mind just sharing with us a little bit about yourself? And then number two, what is your reaction to this slide? Do you see that your role involves data technology, personalization? Is it all mixed in? Is it the reality of your role today?
Sure. And you can hear me fine. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Excellent. All righty. Well, now that my Wi-Fi hasn't gone out, I can actually contribute. So my name's Rick Medeiros with the LYCRA Company. What's interesting is the LYCRA Company basically sells spandex into major brands like Lululemon, Athleta, H&M, et cetera. And part of my role at the company is to really kind of help them not only just kind of transform from a digital standpoint by utilizing data, but also being able to really kind of change around their business model to be more relevant and also grow EBITDA from a bottom line perspective. So as we look at really kind of the future career path, I think everything that Jennifer and Michael said is spot on. And I think that what's unique with, kind of my role today, it actually encompasses both really kind of that marketing leadership role, the digital leadership role, and then also the growth leadership role within the company as far as how that changes the way we need to be thinking about our business model and the untapped opportunities that we need to go to. And data is really going to be the fundamental foundation in how we get there.
And let me ask you, all of you, go, Michael, please.
I was just going to say, listening to Rick talk, it also was surprising to me that CEO is sort of the fourth one down on the list, because I think the way you just talked, Rick, is an awful lot like how a CEO should be talking. And so to the extent that marketing people are silo busters and CEOs are people who are bringing together a bunch of diverse points of view, I actually think that's the most interesting title on that list, and one that, as technology and other and growth and strategy, those are all components of that broader view. That one to me is maybe 5 to 10 years out as opposed to 1 to 5 years out.
Well, and let me ask you guys a follow-up question. We've all been in marketing for 20 some years. Do you think that 5, 10, 15 years ago, marketing leaders truly were limited in their role to having, let's say, media management responsibilities and being viewed as a cost center, and this is a recent phenomena, this expansion of the role? Or was there a point in time in the past where you've seen this shift happen?
I would say, based on my experience, about 10 years ago, I started seeing much more of a shift in marketing leaders having to really kind of build their skill sets around new technologies or new data sources, and even also new ways of actually how you connect with different channels. And from that perspective, I don't think it's really kind of come to maturity fully yet. But I do think, back to what Michael was saying, in order for companies to truly take advantage of really kind of these different trends and initiatives, it really comes down to the chief executive officer and how you're able to really kind of help them see the light at the end of the tunnel on how all of these different data sources and channels can actually help to progress their vision or their five-year vision around what they're trying to do for their particular company.
Super. Thank you.
I also bet there are plenty of people. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, Greg, I can't point to a specific turning point in the journey, but CMOs or marketing leaders have always been responsible for revenue to some extent in the CPG space, and also being great creative storytellers. Absolutely, I think the reliance or the need to meet consumers where they are and be more, consumer centric, use more data is very new. And I would say that at least at McCormick, that has just been embarked upon over the last couple of years. We're probably as an industry, as a CPG industry, a bit behind retail and finance. So I do think that there are more mature industries that are further along. And so I think CPG companies are starting to get their feet under them and discover and truly understand how important this area is.
Mm-hmm. And I guess what I'm hearing you guys share is that there is an industry dependence, right? Like if I work for a pure play retail brand where technology, I'm data first, I may be in a different kind of stage of the journey than if I'm a CPG company. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, the organizer asking me to remind everyone that we absolutely would love to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, kind of real time, we would love to get to those. And I think you can go to the questions tab to provide those. Now let's shift gears very quickly and with a quick poll for all of you, because what we want to really understand is what's really driving the disruptions that make it necessary for marketing leaders to continue to redefine their job description. So let's start the poll. That should appear on your screens. And you can select as many answers as you see appropriate. So let's send the poll to the audience. And I see that it's sent. And as you guys are providing your responses, I have a couple questions for our audience. Jennifer, we were discussing the type of disruptions that McCormick, as all CPG brands, is facing. What drove the brand to react to those disruptions? I guess, what have been McCormick's disruptions or goals, and what role have you played in addressing those disruptions?
So I think there's two big disruptions for McCormick. One being, the emergence of startups and digitally native vertical brands over the last couple of years. We have a mantra or used a mantra at McCormick, which was disrupt or be disrupted. And very much the philosophy of thinking and acting more like a startup, which takes you to my next disruption that was, critically important, which was the shift to using more first-party data. I think, at our company, we were tremendous about using third-party data in the past. It was all we had available to us because for the most part, our retailers have a lot of that first-party data. So we, like I said before, we're setting the foundation to start acquiring first-party data more regularly and more prolifically than ever before. And then how we're using that to tell better stories, to drive deeper levels of personalization is the biggest disruption I think that McCormick is facing now and certainly over the next couple of years, because that sort of investment and that sort of shift takes quite a bit of time to come to fruition.
And I remember Jennifer, when we were preparing for this meeting, you shared with me that McCormick is trying to get closer to its customers. Obviously, many of the products are used in cooking, right? And there are tens of millions of people who cook, and you can't be everyone or everything to everyone. It looked like segmentation was also one of the objectives. Yes. That was the outcome, I guess, of the disruption towards relevance and personalization.
Yeah, a deeper level of segmentation for sure. So, Frank's Red Hot is one of our biggest global brands. And, we have a certain consumer segment we go after. And, there's different motivations and different behaviors associated with using that product. And what we discovered just in, starting to pilot test some of these audiences and building first party data audiences is we discovered a segment of heat lovers, people who just crave heat and really love spice. That's an audience that we can use now across campaigns and even in some cases across some of our other brands that produce a pretty high heat level for those who are, for those who enjoy that.
Understood. So you're getting closer to the reaction is you're getting a better kind of perspective on who those best audiences are. Now, yes. I would love
better
for us
read. Sorry, Greg. I'd also say better read, better engagement, better sales. So we're tracking all those key performance indicators using those first party data set audiences and seeing just pretty dramatic double-digit gains in a lot of our results.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. And I would love to ask our team on the back end to send results to audience. And maybe Michael, also that's being done. Maybe I can ask you to react to some of the results. And I'm looking at them right now on my screen. And hopefully everyone who is participating is seeing the results as well.
So I'm seeing 21.7 increased demand for personalization. I mean, I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'll react to that one because that's the one that I put up at the highest end. So, I think that data is important because it's meeting the needs or providing best in class service or personalization. I think those are the expectations of what customers feel today. But it's really not enough because those are table stakes. And so what I love about being able to meet and understand more about our audience is not that we just meet them where they are, but actually create, experiences throughout the customer journey that they'll actually talk about, right? That they're actually interested in. We know that 2/3 of all purchases are influenced by personal recommendations. We know that brands that get talked about grow at 2.5 times the category average. And oftentimes we use that in marketing as an advertising mantra, which is we got to get out there and step outside of our comfort zone. I don't think we do it enough, or companies don't do it enough when they think about the guest experience. So if we can learn something specific about a person and then use that in a way that elevates the experience so that they share or talk about it, that to me is sort of marketing gold. At CarLotz, if we found that someone was looking for, let's say, a minivan like we did when we first had our first child, that minivan, we could fill that with maybe the supplies that you need in the first few weeks of having a newborn. We found that we had a relatively famous drummer buy a car from one of our retail outlets in Nashville. And so we sent a symbol that he uses signed by everyone on the team, thanking them for his patronage and getting excited about what they were doing. Those are the kind of, I think, maybe not as quantifiable. I think we talk a lot about first party data as being such a quantifiable number, but first party data can also be entrances into stories that elevate the entire game, that get people talking and drive a little bit of momentum so that you're not looking for, incremental results. You're actually looking for exponential results on top. So I'm happy to see that 21.7, that is at the top of the list there.
What I find interesting is that there is actually no one clear disruption. It really seems like all of these disruptions are relevant, which is really a nice segue to our next slide. And the point that I am arriving at is that really the last, not just couple of years, but the last several years have acted as this digital accelerator, just simply because of the shift towards digital. As marketers, it's been almost necessary, unavoidable for us to make investments in data and technology and think about personalization. COVID has definitely been a catalyst, but it's been a trend that's been here for a while. All of these disruptions have been with us for a while, and And really, if we think about the recession, I think that will be a bit of a reset button. And I think that they need to actually justify the value that all these investments that we have made over the past years will rise to the top. Now, Rick, if I can ask for your point of view, do you have any examples of the need to think about value when thinking about data and technology? I know that you really believe that, for example, data and technology can highlight, variety of kind of areas that one needs to focus on when thinking about an organization or brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the one key thing when you think about really kind of the disruptors and then potentially where we might be heading in the future, that future is going to require us to always, regardless of a recession or regardless if the economy is doing well, to really kind of focus on what's driving the most value for the company. And so even given during hard times, that data is going to help to really kind of protect your strategy around what you're focused on and then how you can progress that through. Mm-hmm. And I've been through a couple companies where, there may be market dynamics that take you through kind of that market share tug of war. And so you're either cutting or minimally investing to be able to align towards those peaks and valleys. And I think that, specifically like for the LYCRA Company, what we're doing is given the high energy costs that are putting a crimp on the profitability. Mm-hmm. There's also some of the supply chain shortages to put a crimp as well. With data, what we're able to do is really kind of demonstrate really kind of the business case around what exactly we're going to transform, what's going to generate the most value from a quick win standpoint, and then continue to invest and also hire resources, digital talent, to be able to help see that investment through. And that's really what's going to help us come out of, assuming that we go into, kind of an economic downturn. That'll help us to be able to come out of any situation, hopefully, and hopefully this isn't being too myopic in our views, but hopefully come out ahead from our competition, knowing that we didn't take our eye or investments off the ball during this particular time.
Which I think is thank you, Rick. That's a great segue to, Michael, what you were discussing earlier, which is the lizard brain, like resisting the temptation to let that lizard brain kick in. Can you comment on that, Michael?
Yes, I can comment on the lizard brain. I think the easiest, you saw it in the dot-com bust, you saw it in 2008, and you'll probably see it again if to the point if we do go into an economic downturn, is that it is easier and quicker just to be like, cut it all. We got to go into hibernation. We got to save everything. And we'll figure it out when things turn. The problem with that is that it's too late. It's too late if you wait, and it's too late on a couple of points. And I think Rick was hinting at this, is if you are just trying to prove the value of what you're spending, whether it be through technology or through marketing or, media, at the time that is needed, it is too late. You'll never convince your CEO, your CFO, or the board that this is the time to invest because you don't have any results to back it up. So you have to start now and start making sure that if you've taken the foot off the pedal for the past couple of months or a year, it's time to get back into the mode of reminding people now that the long-term value of the investment, whether it be on platforms or data strategy or marketing communications, it has long-term impact. And I definitely afraid for the clients at the Martin Agency or anywhere else that start to get into that room and try to prove it when it's too late. So, part of the job that I have here for sure is helping our clients realize how can we prove the value? How can we start to, I know Jennifer feels strongly about test and learn. You've got to get out there and test now so that you can fuel it in the future and you'll be ready when it all comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And I would actually say that the conversations we're having now in this arena are very different than they were 2, 3, 5 years ago. I've been working in digital long enough to remember when it sat at the kids' table, as I like to call it. We were just hoping to get something to be able to go out and try from a media perspective. Mm-hmm. And the fact that now that we have these chief digital officers, chief strategy officers, I mean, that is, talking to the board of directors, talking to that C-suite executive, they are the ones that have the lizard brains, to your point, Michael, and the ones that are interested in the long-term gain. So I think I think our ability to be able to have those conversations at the right level and get the momentum moving in the right direction are definitely very different than they were even just a few years ago.
Well, you asked earlier about what the turning point was. I actually think there's, from my experience of being in a consultative role in some places, is that there's still a lot of CEOs, there's still a lot of CFOs out there that don't necessarily always see marketing as an accretive, position. I'm sure there are lots of people on this call right now who would want to be able to have a CEO, CFO, other executive board members that understand the power of what marketing really can be and how it can actually move the business forward. So even though it started 5 to 10 years ago, there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that the people that we sit with understand the true value of what it is that we bring to the table. I know there are a couple of questions, and they're talking about value and how do you prove the value. And if I knew that, I'd probably be more successful than I am today, because I think it's really difficult to prove that value. But you do have to just keep doing it and having little tests and make sure that you're showing every single time, here's the impact. We did this, and therefore we saw these things.
Great discussion. And I'm actually, to your point, Michael, I'm reading one comment from Katrina Miner. And Katrina says, firmly believe that to combat the lizard brain, a proactive change management culture is imperative to implement before things go off the rails. So, that really resonates with me as well. I'll share one kind of data point that we don't have time to share today. We had about 40 questions and answers in this survey that we conducted. And one of the questions was, what are the key challenges to marketers pushing a stronger data and tech agenda internally? And the number one challenge that the participants provided was this continued addiction to investing in media. And because it's viewed as, working capital, like I've been around that term for 20 years now, and reluctance to invest in non-working capital, and I'm using a CFO language here, right? Like data and technology. And I agree with both of you that maybe it's less, maybe we have agency as marketers, right? I mean, we are in whatever control of our future that we can be. And it is on us to change the narrative and to explain to that CEO, CFO, to the board, why a sustained long-term investment in data and tech may ultimately better return investment than an activation. So I want to move forward with the topics. I think it's a great conversation. The good news for the audience is that in 3 slides, so in about 10 minutes, we actually will talk about the value, the practical examples of value that you can share internally when it comes to data and tech. So let me switch gears for a second. When we think about these disruptions and the changing role that market leaders have today, that's really part of a number of top priorities that organizations are undertaking today. So many organizations are going through all kinds of transformations. It's on us as marketing leaders to explain the examples of marketing transformations that should be happening. So, for example, we discovered that over 70% of responders said that some of the top priorities that they're going through is using data to enhance experience. Another 60+% said that they're looking at new partners. They're looking at upskilling their teams. That's answer number 4. They're also looking at changing their technology stack. I mean, the key message for me here is that there is no one silver bullet. There are a number of bronze bullets. It's about our team, external teams, data, tech, user experience. Again, back to the panel, Jennifer, I know we were reviewing this earlier. There were certain top initiatives that stood out more for you than others. Can you share what they are?
Sure. That third one really resonates with me around just active use of both data and tech in our marketing activities. So, to the question that was raised earlier, Greg, McCormick suffers from that as well. We have our own media addictions. And so And we're also new at using first-party data across different parts of the journey or even across campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the challenges we've had, and one of the ways that we've met those challenges, is you can't convince everyone to just go full tilt in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to find some advocates and some champions, some like-minded people, both inside the marketing organization, maybe inside of IT, maybe in other parts of the business that you aren't thinking about, and then really develop some of those pilot cases or those test and learn examples where you can start to see some of that impact without spending a lot of money. And oftentimes not even using machine learning or artificial intelligence, sometimes using the data that you have sitting right in front of you. So what we've been able to do over the last couple of years is start to dip our toes in the water there and really kind of prove out the value of using data in a way, and then being able to make that, kind of translate that into the benefits across all marketers. I do feel like people sitting across technology, data, marketing kind of sometimes speak different languages, which also gets to be a bit of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
If I invite marketers to a conversation where we need to talk about metadata and taxonomy, suddenly everybody has a root canal that they need to get to right away. So it takes some time. I mean, it definitely takes some time, some language breakdowns, but also starting very small and getting your feet wet with it, in order to prove out that valuable use case.
What I'm hearing from you, Jennifer, is that it's really I think and I'm guilty of this, right? Like it would be great to outsource human intelligence to an algorithm, but we ultimately operate in people-based systems. And I love your point about proof of concept or crawl, walk, run. I know when I work with clients, we call it evolutionary revolution at Delve. Like we never recommend big, and which is kind of counterintuitive to the topic, but we never recommend big transformative projects because we think it's very risky. We think it's much easier to push a bunch of smaller incremental projects that can work themselves up to a bigger project that's more transformative. And so that's kind of what I'm walking away with. And Rick, what stands out the most to you? I think, we spoke about data silos and kind of using data across different parts of the organization. But is that what you're hearing, or is there an initiative that you're kind of in the midst of today?
I'm really aligned towards the comment that Jennifer brought up earlier, which is going to where your customers are. So she had a little bit of spice to that conversation there, no pun intended with McCormick. But
that was a good one, by the way.
Yeah, I'll see if I can come up with another. But I really think when you start defining where your customers are, that helps you to define what marketing transformation means. Because marketing transformation isn't about, finding your customers and then being able to up your investment in digital advertising by 20%, and then your return is going to be, 40% more because of that investment. It's more of, how do you actually identify the channels that are most effective to reach your customers? And that's where the first party data can come into play. Let me just give one quick example here at LYCRA. At the LYCRA Company, we are a manufacturing company. We're not sexy, okay? And so we provide really kind of our technologies to fabric mills to incorporate our technologies into those fabrics those mills are creating. And then those mills are looking for opportunities to connect with, the Athletas, the Lululemons, et cetera. Well, we own the data as far as the connections with the mills. The brands like the Lulus don't have any connection with the mills, but we also own the data or the first party data with all these brands and retailers. So having said that, we become really kind of the data broker. And that data broker, we utilize that to connect those two different customer types together. But then beyond those two customer types, how do we reach out to customers that we currently don't deal with that could have value from that data broker type relationship and help them to expand their business? And then that then requires us to find, the right talent to come in and help us see that through. So it's a very complex way in how it needs to be defined, depending on your business model, but it doesn't have to be complex in how you execute it.
Thank you, Rick. So we have probably 10 minutes left in our discussion, but I think this would be really, really relevant 10 minutes. We've established so far that obviously all marketers are under pressure. There are many disruptions that we're facing. The recession, it's one of many recessions that we probably all have lived through. And we're emphasizing the need to really stay strong, to not allow that lizard brain to take over, and to continue to educate our organizations about the need to invest in what we would classically call non-working capital, while not abandoning the working capital, which is marketing budgets. And obviously, our organizations are often in the midst of different transformations. But what is one recurring theme that we've seen in the research all marketers go back to? So I want to share this on the next slide. So what was really interesting to me is that when we delve deeper into customer obsession, which again is an objective that many marketers have, the theme was first-party data. So when we asked about what responsibilities should be added to your role as a marketing leader, again, it was about using data to develop better experiences. It was about engaging with our internal team members to look at data, to better understand our customers. It was about doing more advanced data projects, using data in media activation, and optimizing UX. And I remember that, Jennifer, you and I were speaking about, and I didn't think that all of these categories could be labeled as first-party data. And you corrected me and you said, no, it's actually first-party data.
That's right.
Now,
sorry, go ahead, Greg.
So I think one of the messages that we have for the audience is that first-party data isn't just a reaction to third-party cookie deprecation. I often get a little disappointed when we as industry think about first-party data as simply something that we have to focus on because third-party data is going away. I strongly believe this is a key element of a long-term strategy that brands should have. And Michael, whether that's at CarLotz, whether it's now at the Martin Agency, do you see whether either the market leaders that you're working with talk about first-party data? And was this a topic at CarLotz? Was first-party data a recurring theme that you remember from CarLotz?
From last week? Yes, I do.
From last week, exactly. Well, hopefully, I'm sure you remember.
I would say to your point I think it's a great, important point that first-party data can't just be a reaction to third-party data going away, right? So, and I think it's about life stage and company journey. So it's a very different place for Jennifer to be talking about data because they've been doing it for a long time. Now, you might not have as much as you'd like, and you might be developing all those skills, but you've certainly been gathering what you can for a long time. CarLotz is a young company, growth mode and minded. So it's building systems right now that can actually process first-party data. And it's as a first-party marketer, it's obviously more valuable because you can make significant changes to personalized experiences that get people talking, that can actually influence a sale, not just traffic. It's not just optimized to impressions. It's actually optimized to, one-to-one, interactions that either happen in the hub, in the store, or online, or on your app. And so being able to take that data and actually use it, I think is super important. One of the things, so being a first-party marketer in that role, one thing that did come up that's not necessarily outlined in this, that it also opens up another problem or another disruption that we as marketers have to think about, which is the content that goes along with all of this data, right? So opening up all these channels, understanding what your customers are looking for, knowing who they are and what they're capable of means, oh my God, I've got to create content that works specifically for each individual that comes through my experience. And building that, whether you insource it or outsource it, is no small task. And I think it actually is another place where we talked earlier about investment and value. and I'm not sure I have the answer for this, which is how do you actually prove long-term value in the creation of a content expertise? So adding the role of chief content officer to the CMO is something that you're going to have to do. I think it goes hand in hand with first party, and it's early days yet to be able to figure out, what does that look like? What are the resources required? What's the investment? And then what's the payoff? But I do think that that's going to be something that is will be an important next step for all of us to figure out.
Jennifer, Rick, any reactions before we continue?
I'll just build on what Michael said and say, I think where we need to go from a creative and content storytelling perspective, because I absolutely agree, with Michael in terms of that being so critical wherever you are on the customer journey, is, McCormick's done a great job at investing in those types of resources. We have a pretty extensive in-house content studio with now thousands of assets at our disposal. But how do we use first-party data to then inform what story we should be telling at what moment? And then how do we bring that all together in a really integrated and seamless way that makes sense for each and every consumer? So I think that's another kind of like lens through which to look through in terms of where you can go and how you need to think about just kind of your marketing organization and the different types of skill sets that you probably need both in-house and outsourced in your company.
Super, thank you both. And I want to jump to our last slide, which really tries to bring it all together. So in this question, we asked marketing leaders, what are some of the benefits that they associate with activating their first-party data? And what I found interesting here, because that resonates with my experience, is that activation of finding value from data isn't just about saving money or reallocating budgets towards what works. Those are very relevant and classic examples. It's also about just making faster decisions. That was the first answer. Or it's about making decisions or recommendations that can be measurable. There's a measurable value associated with them. That was a second answer. It's also about understanding where marketing is inefficient. It's about finding high-value customers. Again, it looks like many of the objectives that we have as marketers can be gotten to or can be enabled or accelerated with first-party data. I would love to hear from all panelists. What's your reaction to, what have you seen in your experience be the value of using data? And is it sometimes quantitative and sometimes it's qualitative?
Yeah, I can add my 2 cents here. So I think, all the answers that are given on here, there's a fairly, when you look at the distribution of answers and the results, fairly evenly distributed as far as, the following benefits that you see here with first-party data. I would say that there's one additional one that, I've had to experience in my current role and the previous role as well, which is all of this information really kind of goes back to what Michael was saying, which is, if you have this data is a perfect opportunity to go back and educate your CEO to get them on board further with why it's important to continuing to invest within this level of data integration and data investment. And so with that then supports, the type of digital skill sets you need to bring in, where you need to be focused on to provide the most, effective return on investment, for what you're trying to invest in. And then how does this make sure that you can drive better, faster decision-making and be able to really kind of show that, what you're building is providing, that efficient ROI that the company is looking for that will help protect you during times when they do get tough.
And I think, Greg, it's all about kind of correlating your use of first-party data back to sales. Which for McCormick, outside of the holiday season, is typically where we're probably running the most in terms of media and different campaigns. Really hard to distill how first-party data is being used to drive sales, just because there's so much going on. But one of the early examples we had of success, one of our test and learns, was basically using first-party data that came through our website, recognizing that we had a French toast recipe that was spiking organically for no reason that we knew about, nothing that we paid for or intended to happen. But then in looking at the first party data associated with that, we saw that that was millennial moms making French toast for their kids on the weekend, visiting us through a mobile device, spending about 6 to 8 minutes on the site. And that pattern repeated itself every weekend. And so then just by asking more of the, why did that happen? And now what can we go do with that? We knew, people had cinnamon and vanilla in their pantry. We knew the next time they came to the site, we could give them more curated content or how to make better French toast, how to make pancakes, how to use those spices in more of what you're making for your kids at home. And we could do that both on platform and off platform. And we were able to tie direct sales correlation of those products to the efforts through the use of that first party data. So that was probably our first kind of our big small win in using data like that in a really scrappy way.
And Michael, I'd love to hear from you in a second, but what resonates with me, Jennifer, is that value or these insights from data, they don't have to be tremendous, right? Learning about the need to use cinnamon in pancakes, that may seem it's a simple insight, yet it can be so powerful. And if we don't know that, then we are not able to activate those insights in, for example, creative or in messaging or the audiences we pursue, or where we take that click to a landing page. I often find that when I work with brands that we're so addicted to trying to find some, machine learning or AI-driven recommendations, and we kind of forget about fundamental lessons that we can kind of deploy in marketing. Michael, any reactions from you?
No, not really. To be honest, I think I'm just going to kind of reiterate what you just said, but maybe in a different light. I know walking into a CMO role for the first time, the idea of data, first party, second, third party, whatever, is very overwhelming. The platforms and the systems, the CRM, the CMS, whatever you need to do, it is a very overwhelming situation. And to hear stories like Jennifer's, where first party data is simply just understanding your customer. We've been doing it forever. We just have new ways of finding that data, and we have new ways of using that data. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And I actually think your CFO, your CEO, and your board will benefit from a sort of naive, child's-like look at first party data to just get a little bit better and do some things that will make a big difference that don't necessarily cost an arm and a leg at first. Because as soon as you start building, a little bit of credibility using first party data in that naive way, then you can start saying, wow, if I can do it on this level, what happens when I add this platform? What if I add this experience? And so it's just a reminder. It doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Wonderful. I love all the answers. Thank you. We're about to go into a quick Q&A. Quick comment, Delve executes a number of first-party data projects. We love to crawl, walk, run. We love to start small and build that confidence internally, helping brands embrace their data. So if you'd like to talk to us about any of your first-party data projects or access this research, please go to our website, delvedeeper.com, or feel free to email me at greg@delvedeeper. And let's go into a quick Q&A, which will be a video-only layout. And we probably have time for one question.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. Terrific presentation. Well, we now are ready to open the floor to your questions. As a reminder, to participate in our Q&A, just type your questions into the Ask a Question text area and click the Send button. Let me get to one of our first questions here. And it really, one of our attendees really loved, I'm going to start with Jennifer here. Really loved your French toast analogy here. A terrific thought. The question is, we're willing to invest in media as working capital. That is to say, money out the door. But technology investments are seen as non-working capital in our company. Any advice on how to shift our thinking? It seems to me, I'll start with Jennifer, Your connection to sales seems a compelling connection to me on making it working capital. Thoughts?
Well, we didn't use any fancy technology for that, Chris.
Right.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but I think where we've been progressively, because as I mentioned earlier, we're also pretty good media addicts at McCormick and at across CPG companies. I think where we've been able to go is starting to kind of dive deeper into what our existing technology platforms are doing for us. And then also taking the opportunity with some of the first party data insights we've had to start to unpack or unearth that first party data from the respective technology platforms that it's sat in some cases. And then in other cases, starting to really kind of build the API connections between those platforms has been most critical for us. And I would say that was something that we did, again, in support with our IT organization, really kind of doing a lot of heavy lifting before we brought some of the marketing team members into that arena, just because we wanted to show them some of the value of that before talking about doing greater investments. And we certainly didn't do that all at once because we have a ton of tech platforms, best in breed tech platforms, as you might imagine. None of them were connected, which is sort of shocking. So how do you start to prioritize? Like if I can connect our CMS tool to our digital asset management tool, and I can connect that to our contact service, tool, then what can we do? And just being able to start asking those questions and bringing some of those disparate sets together really turned the tables for us. But it did start small and eventually grow into something much larger. I'm not sure if I actually asked the question, but answered the question, but that's what I got.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer, your answer opened the door to our next question from our attendee. Our attendee asks, my organization is slow to accept the need for first-party data. After all has been published and discussed, it's surprising to me, but our attendee asks, how should I start to convince my team to pay attention to first-party data? And I'm going to throw it over to Mike and Rick as well, because you've said some very pertinent things on this topic. How do you convince your team to pay attention to first-party data? Thoughts?
I'd say, and it sort of does fit with what Jennifer is saying, because you're right, it does open the door. The fact is, you got to just bring in more people. The problem is that we've been working in silos for so long, and these things, these platforms and these first party, they cross silos. They're not marketing, they're not tech, they're not digital, they're not UX. So you've got to be able to partner with the people on either side of you to start looking at these things more holistically. And I will put a plug in for a marketing data analyst who knows how to project and and knows how to show business impact. I mean, that to me is the secret sauce. You got to have someone in there who can look across those different points and start to quantify what that investment will return.
Sounds good. Rick, real quick response. First-party data value.
Yeah, I think Jennifer hit it on the head when she said you really got to connect the value back to sales. And so, in the current situation that we're in right now, partnering up with your sales leader, getting them on board to really kind of understand the benefits of what you're trying to drive from a marketing standpoint that supports their ability to really go out and drive sales. That's the first step to really kind of making sure that you can get people to start adopting and investing into the data needs that you have and start moving faster than slower. So if you can really develop out that convincing pitch to demonstrate what you're going to do is going to impact the sales, that will be really kind of the first step. And every company will be different in how you approach. So your approach will matter here.
Sounds great. Thanks, Rick. Well, we've reached the end of our time. Thanks to everyone for attending AdAge's custom webcast, sponsored by DELVE. Now, you can also view and listen to this presentation on demand using the same link used to attend today. You'll receive an email as soon as your archive is ready, so keep your eye peeled on your inbox. And listen, if we didn't get to your questions, we had a lot of great questions. If we didn't get to them during our live broadcast, the DELVE team and our guests will get back to you with your answers quick smart. So on behalf of our guests today, Greg, Michael, Jennifer, and Rick, thanks so much for your time. Have a great and prosperous day.